Good morning, everyone. This is the last live lecture for this semester. I could keep going. I could probably make any lecture into 2 lectures if we wanted to. I hope you're well awake. We're going to cover a lot of material. I built this one lecture based on an MIT IAP course that I attended, 1 3-hour, maybe 4 or 5 books I've read, and then my experience. So this doesn't come from the National Science Foundation. They acknowledge that teams are very important, but they kind of stay away from the topic because it's difficult. So that actually preparing for this class has been definitely the most time consuming. So just a recap from last time on class number 8, we talked about commercialization strategy. And there was a really good piece of feedback at the end. Somebody said, what exactly is the strategy? So that's why I brought this back here. My view of implementing a commercialization strategy is you want to make progress. So your strategy should be based around learning fast, making a bunch of decisions left and right. And then at the end of the day, if you shake the entire ecosystem of the industry that you're working on, whatever is the best is going to show up for you. So it's a little different perhaps than a traditional marketing strategy and some business strategy that are more stagnant, if you will, or fixed in time. Somebody commented to me last week. I said, if you look back the past 2 or 3 years, you can make a very nice Gantt chart on what we did. And then the comment from that guy who worked for a very big company, he's like, yeah, it's a lot easier to make the chart after the fact. And it's a fair thing, but at the end of the day, we managed to get where we needed to be with our mission. What's important is the mission, what you're going to try to do for that industry, what you're going to deliver to our market. Exactly how you get there, if you stay a little fluid, you have to stay focused. You can't consider all the alternatives. That's why we had that chart last time, kind of looking at the entire map of possibility between licensing to doing everything yourself. There's a big range there. So you want to start kind of knowing where you're going. But the basic to the question about what is the strategy is typically licensing, going with a partner, or doing it yourself, scaling up the operation. And if you hesitate between alternate approaches, you have to essentially work harder because now you have a roadmap for each one of them, and they may or may not overlap. So it's a challenging process, but it can be done. It is, as we discussed, a very, very important aspect of doing technology innovation is to bring it to the market. Okay, today the teams. Everybody talks about it, that it's the most important asset of the company. And just as far as some initial thoughts for your consideration, if you're gonna form a team, let's say it's 4 people. It's an example. You would like with those 4 core people to be able to make progress on your mission. Whatever exactly the detail of the strategy is, but you essentially build a team to see that you have resources, skills, interests to make significant progress. Having a culture that's highly result-oriented is not only very, very necessary for a small organization, so it's even more necessary, but it's also easier. Okay, so as long as you keep track of that and you consider it as something important for developing very fast processes. So the idea here is if we have a group of people where we meet, we talk about exactly what we've done and then spend a lot of time talking about what we're going to do next. That's how we get to our results. If we just start spending a lot of time saying, I've worked really hard on this and these are the issues I found, you're not focusing on the results. You're focusing on whatever, politics and other things that are really not productive for making progress. The other really, really kind of overarching principle for you to think about is if your company is moving really fast, It also means that the roles are moving extremely fast, and therefore you always need to be on the lookout to reevaluate what you need and what every individual needs. And so I had a reflection, which is perfectly timely with this, with respect to MMT, the company that I've been co-founding and leading at this point. I mentioned that I saw some eyebrows saying that it was horrible a certain period of time, let's say 2-3 years ago. And, you know, I don't think the amount of pain itself will necessarily ever be paid back by, you know, profit or exit or anything like that. What I personally feel is what I'm going to gain out of this is the ability to learn. That is today the most, it's the one thing that I'm most grateful to my team, to the company, and to our customer. It forced me at 41 years old to learn and change who I am professionally and personally at a much faster rate than I would have ever done if I had continued working, doing other stuff. I can guarantee you that. So that was the overview. Let's go step by step. You're going to form a team, and there's some statistics here on the size of a typical co-founder team for technology. It's not exactly technology, but for a startup. So the median is 2 people. That's 40% of what is created. But then if you look at those general chart for productivity of teams, you see that you start saturating in actual productivity at about 5 to 6. That's what I went for. We had a big team going right off the bat. I don't think it was lack of confidence. I think it was just me being blunt and being also good at selling the mission. So I was able to onboard people that, you know, they didn't join for the money, they joined for the mission. Some extra thoughts that probably apply to any team that you form. Working with your friends is a danger. It may or may not work. If you can find people you went to school with or you had a job with, gosh, you have so much more on already a working relationship, because let's just be absolutely honest. Work is tough. It sucks, okay? This is not about having a great time. It's about working. And if you're going to work with someone, you need to establish those boundaries, be very, very efficient at how you handle your relationship with those people. So this is basic statistics, and I apply that. So 2 of our co-founders that are currently CTO and VP, people that I worked on back 7 years ago. So we also not only have working experience, but we have a reference, this big company we work for. We can use it in discussion as an example of things we want to do, things we don't want to do. Doesn't matter which way, as long as we're able to discuss it efficiently and move forward. So I will be using a few slides that have the MMT logo. It's from David Nino. That's the class I took. I was able to attend just one afternoon, but I reviewed the other material. And I will only speak to the things that were helpful to me, that I've assimilated to this point. So you want to form teams with complementary skills, not too similar, not too different. And then the people have to be willing to really work together. That's actually is the hardest part, the third bullet. So how do you know that ahead, and how you foster that team effort? Not everybody's played hockey or something like that. So football, baseball. So you have to handle how you're going to, you know, make it into a team result focused environment. So you have to be able to acknowledge that people have different interests. Very important. It shouldn't be hidden and just understood. It can be discussed openly. Like, okay, you'd like to make $5 more an hour. I'd like to pay you $5 less. So we are going to disagree to that, okay? Let's just accept that fact, and then of course we can talk about it. But there should be an intention here it makes sense. It actually came up a number of times. So there's a lot of aspect and there's a lot of team dynamic that can lead to reduced responsibility, people not wanting to stand for yourself. So if you are in an environment where people are very accomplished and then they don't show all the mistakes that they've done and they still do, it's very hard for the others to do it, So to me, with the time that we really started talking about the fact that we really were not perfect and needed really help on certain things, it kind of enabled that communication, that commitment and trust to be able to build a better team. And we'll go back to some of these things, but what I want to emphasize is, well, of course, when you're building a team, you want to look into what the company needs and what are the people's not only skills, but their interests. So, they may find that interesting. If they worked, we had a situation recently, somebody worked for a big company for 10 years. They were like, oh, I like the small company mentality. And when it got down to it, he bailed out. He just went for another big company, okay? And there's no reason other than he was not willing to just jump in and learn. So he was, called it a risk factor. And I was like, okay, sure. Well, I thought we were going to give you a salary and all the, uptake more than anything else. But and that to me is great because that's a closed case. If somebody doesn't get scared, that's the last thing you want. You can't be driving as fast as we are and get scared every time something happens. Okay, that's just not going to work. So. Just applying again that progress principle. Instead of having a strategy, we're going to hire all those people and then figure out what the job description is. We said this is a good match. We'll bring him in, show him what it is, and see if he takes it or not. Take it. So let's move on. Okay. And it turns out, as far as business development, I have to stay manager for this year. There's been a lot of feedback about that. That even though I want to do other things, it's going to be a longer transition than what I was hoping for. Topic here is the culture and the people that you want to hire. They have to be willing to learn fast. I mean, it's the same way that I mentioned to you, it's been my greatest opportunity. It's the one thing that I'm most grateful for, but it's also kind of a necessity. Okay, so you have to be interested in that notion of changing yourself really fast. And there was a book that I read, the summary, Team of Teams, and I think I maybe have a more full reference to it later, that says, what's key for an organization is not so much skill, it's adaptability. And it does certainly apply to us. I used to be really a technical engineer, writing specification and writing an engineering report, going to the lab, and now I have to do other things. So when it comes to working in team, one topic that is the reason to keep your team small is decision making. And I have a very specific example. Friday I spent half an hour talking to this super big company, and I can tell that they don't have a decision process in place. They don't know how they're going to make a decision. And that's a big problem because the only way an organization like that would actually move is a response to a disaster. They'll move. They'll have to do something at that point. Or somebody really sticking out saying, hey, what would it take for us to decide here what is going to be our decision tree? How are we going to, who's making the decision, who's involved, who is not involved, I think if I look at some of the big companies, that's those that really work well. I think to get to that realization when there's an acknowledgement that there's no decision process in place, then you have to take the action to actually have a decision process. So I'm hoping it happens for a few of the big guys that I spend a little time with. You're never going to have all the information you'd like to have to make a decision. Especially, I think that's just a very general statement. If that's the only thing you want to go home with, it's just not going to happen. If you take too much of your time, some of the data is going to change significantly, and then you're going to get very tired because you're behind, and you think you got a very sophisticated approach. So you have to consider what are the factors that are important. Maybe there's only 2, maybe there's 5. Just list them, okay? And the team can be very helpful to do that. And then take it back down to a decision point. The day that you say we're doing something or we're not comfortable, we're not doing anything. But both are very important because you have to realize that essentially you have not completed your process. Now you have to decide, I'm not completed, but what are the extra things that I forgot to take into account? Maybe it's just, I want to wait and I want to restart a process later. But the extent that you are able to be very clear that, yeah, that whole process is, you have, an opportunity, and then you have to say, I'm going to say yes or no. But the idea is now you start thinking about what all the different things that are important to you, and maybe if you're able to prioritize them, that's great. Then you go and get some more information, you have some discussion, then eventually you narrow it down. That's like generally in my head and with the team. We don't draw these things. I'm just really trying to make sure I'm clear here. Are you ready? Need something? Did you somehow? And then wait is always there. But be careful with this one. Because if you wait, you don't learn. So for me, I would rather make a decision that's maybe smaller, but still a really, really clear decision. So now I get data and I can start over again. And I get so quick with this because everybody now remembers what the criteria are because you work through it. And it becomes almost natural. It's just like walking. Okay. I think you probably sense this. You probably can see that I like quotes like that. Action. Action has 3 stages: the decision born of thought, the order of preparation for execution, and the execution itself. So action means you are going to do something. You can't just have a meeting. That doesn't count. You need will. That's based on your character. And of course, you need intellect. And intellect without will is worthless. Will without intellect is dangerous. So if you're very, very strong in one area for one specific process that you're going through, try to get the other, right? There's too much talking. Then you want to bring somebody that's like, well, I'm sorry, but what are we doing here? It's very nice. Which leads me to now a new topic for the day. And that is how to handle just general difficulties that teams have. So the book is kind of negative, the 5 dysfunctions of a team. And that was given to me 18 months ago by an investor, a current investor, which I took well. So I had to learn a few things. So this is your pyramid on how you're able to be a very, very effective team, is you avoid all these issues by building trust, which means vulnerability. If we just have lunch, I'll tell you all these things that I've done and the things that I won't do and the things that I'm trying now, to work on, because I'm sure not perfect, but I want to work on it. Which is the fear of conflict is a little different. That's the ability to acknowledge differences. I talked about difference in pay and things like that. So if you're willing to acknowledge that there's conflicts, there's differences in point of view, opinions, it's super powerful. Because now you have somebody in your face to always remind you of these things that you don't think are the most important, but they have to be a factor, right? They can't just be completely ignored, so they're part of this. So if you're able to associate individuals with all those things that are important, I'm just just giving you some ideas here how to do that very simply. You kind of built in your decision process into your organization. Commitment. So if I step into a meeting, I try to not have a decision already made up. Unless really I have a good point and I think I've got it all figured out. Because by doing that, I enable the people to influence the process and make it very, very productive. So that was part of that leadership class or some of the stuff I read online. I mean, I get very confused sometimes where I get the information these days. But essentially, if I come to you and say, I've been thinking about this is a big problem, and this is, how I think we got to solve it. What do you think? Not very exciting, right? You got your boss right there. He's already figured out what he wants to do. You poke some holes in it, but it doesn't really need. It's like, oh gosh, I've been worried about this all weekend, and I haven't really come up with anything because it's, for me, it's not that I'm lazy, but I do that on purpose now. I only work so hard to clarify what I think the problem is. And I just stop right there. I always step into a meeting. We're having a couple of those this week that I don't know what's going to happen. That makes it exciting, actually, right? I mean, that's why you go to work. Accountability. It's a very different. So accountability comes in generally in saying if you agree to do something, you either do it or you come back to me and say, I'm sorry, I can't do that. I don't want to do it anymore or something like that. You don't just, go for a couple of weeks and then, oh yeah, I forgot about this. No, that's not cool. But in the context of team here, what that accountability is whatever is that decision point, the team members have to move on with it. They have to accept it and make that process work, make progress and learn from it. It could be the next thing that happens after the decision makes you reconsider what the balance and all those factors. That's fine. That person can be very well responsible for bringing that up. Hey, I know you dismissed this factor or you didn't consider it as the most important, but see what happened here. We got two customers that are not happy, so you're still, thinking it's the exact same thing, and yes or maybe yes or no. And then the attention to result. There's a bunch of slides that I've taken out. To me, that's the difference between focusing when you look at other people and sort of evaluating. You want to focus on the actual progress they made as opposed to the perception that they made progress. That avoids you from falling into the great talker type show where, every time everything is very, very positive, but the result itself, the incremental change towards where you're going is just not happening. And that's a very common disease of teams and organizations. I've been putting a lot of thoughts into the difference between a functional team and a great team. And it really is motivation. Motivation, the interest of going to work. One thing that came up with a month ago, and our VP really likes it, is go to work hungry, go home satisfied. Okay? It's hard, but if you set your mindset just in terms of doing that, and there's a lot more, stuff that you can take into account. It's hard. Now you're going to have to stand up for what you think. Gosh, yeah, it's work, right? It's not, going on a cheerleading exercise. So we have only a couple slides about goals. I can't say that I'm the most sophisticated person there, but typically goals, they have to be simple and they have to be motivating and all that. So this chart says, is the end very clear? So you want to be very, very clear on what the end is, but you don't want to be specific on how to get there. That's kind of the key, because then it allows it empower people to find their own ways. It's a big communication exercise. especially for me, is think all the time, and I got a lot of stuff in my head. Now I got to pull it out as to what I think is the direction and discuss it, because I may or may not be right. So a real goal is agreed upon and is typically built by the guy who needs the goal accomplished and the guy who's actually responsible for making that goal realized. So sometimes it may be that you have to really negotiate and debate about what a reasonable goal should be. So this is an interesting one. It's a very, very high challenge, but you don't have all the skills, you're very anxious. If the challenge is low and you're very skilled, you're bored. So when you think about hiring people, there are people that are essentially above the pay rate, that they're interested in things that are not exactly what the goal of the companies are, and that's an important thing to consider. So there's a say, there's a say that, I'll get there. With respect to this specific topic, I think the key is when we're talking about the overlap between what the company needs and what people want, that's kind of relates to that, based on the level of skill, experience, and motivation, what's their long-term vision. You want to get the best overlap out of those two, and then you're in good shape. So it means a lot of communication. It means really knowing the people you're hiring, or you take chances sometimes. It just depends on how much time you have and see what works, what doesn't. SMART goals. Specific, measurable, aligned with the overall goal for the company. Realistic. If you set a goal that can't be reached, that's very demotivating. So it's a lot easier if the bars, if it's a challenge, but the bar is a little smaller, that's a good way to start that process of goal setting. So when I move into thinking about goals, at first I was trying to be a little more lenient to make sure that transition was going to be possible, essentially. You have to provide a lot of resources, which leads me to another topic. The one very useful thing about how the team dynamic goes is the sad story is when you form a new team, all those conduct principles, like how people work together, they get set very, very, very quickly. So if you already have a team for the semester, you're working on a project, this is all just, gosh, this is going to be hard. But really cool thing, you just add one person. Now you have a new team, and everything is up for reevaluation if that person is influential. So keep that in mind. I wish I knew that, because it's just like, gosh, this is going to be very, very hard. Just bring in another friend, and just say like, well, we kind of started here, but how do we restart? Because we're not going where we want to be. But if you're very strong, you can probably do that without bringing somebody new and just say, this is not working. We got to reevaluate how we're going to work together. And that's just being able to face conflicts and say, I'm not very happy here. I don't know who's happy, but and then spur that discussion. Which positive norm, helping each other, communication. Doing some of the small stuff that can be hard if life is terrible, but this has been very, very helpful to our team anyway, that you have two different things you can do when things are not going well. One is to try to reorient, and that can be a good way to start. But let's say somebody is going and going and going and going. It's not by just trying to reorient that you can change them sometimes. So the counseling is the other alternative, where you have to be a little bit clear that that person is doing its best. They're very vested into the success of the company, but you're concerned because the direction you're going right now is a departure from where you feel that the direction is. So it's tough. But the first part is, the reason you're sitting down with them is they're valuable to the company. And the tough part is something needs to happen, and you're willing to spend the time with them just discussing and acknowledging what the problem is. Okay, and it's not their problem, it's the company problem. Because most of the time when you get in a bad spot, for me, if I'm the boss, hey, it's at least half my fault, okay? Because I didn't do this job. So now we're here. So I'm accountable for that. I feel bad about it, and I want to make it work. I can't keep that going. So if you fail a little bit on this as the manager or the team leader, whatever you're doing, you have to get to here. You're a big part of why you get there. Actually, that's my point of view. If it's in the book, I didn't read it. So if you're going to talk, you want to be very, very, very specific to what is the fact, the thing that happened that you feel is a problem. Maybe it's somebody is not really taking feedback, he's overruling feedback from somebody else, whatever the problem is. You want to be very, very specific as opposed to saying, well, you suck, That's not going to get you anywhere, okay? It's tough, but it's a very, very needed step. And some of those things there is, again, you should be trusting that if the person that I'm talking to, I have to be trusting that I'm in their best interest and the interest of the company. I'm trying to get those two things to get back together, what the company needs, what the person wants, okay? That's what I'm doing. And I'm very committed to try to do that if they're going to do the same. And be calm, okay? C-A-L-M. Let's make sure. On everything that I've seen, that is not all the time, but especially for young managers, big problem, big challenge. It's not very fun to think that you haven't been doing your job, Maybe we'll just take a couple of questions because I see you paying attention, but I'm going to switch a little bit the topic here. So any thoughts related to me, the company, or what I was talking about? You guys think? Makes any sense? You've seen all this before? Who has seen all this before? You did? Good. No, so good, thank you. What's the question?
Do you change your strategy of delivering feedback depending on who you're talking to?
The change in the delivery of the feedback, depending on the person you're talking to, we've had to do it. And to me, that was a sign that we did not have a very homogeneous culture at that point in time. So it has happened. But if it's very homogeneous, the kind of things I'm talking about with respect to being trusting, committed, and calm, I'm working on that right now. I'd like that to be the procedure, essentially. But it's a very, very good comment. And that's, again, a sign that, I'm still learning my job. I'm not really fully qualified to do it. Thank you for that. Anybody else? All right. All right, so it has to be motivating, right? That's the reason for doing this. So if something's going on and that's not right, and the best sign that I've personally experienced is tension. People not really talking about the issues, red flag, okay? And that's something that, I've seen in many organizations. I've had the fortune to go around quite a bit, and yeah, that's a red herring. That means there's going to be some consoling action going on, or changing certain aspect of the team too. Sometimes it's just no way around it. What I mean by that is letting people go. We're clear. Developing a culture of performance as opposed to perception of performance. We already talked about that a little bit, so I think I just went a little bit ahead of the game. So here's the thought. Because I want it to be helpful for people who may want to consider doing this. I see other people doing this. So this is really my slide, except for this little thing here from Steve Blank. So at the beginning, I say, if you're going to start a startup, you're going to have pioneers, people that don't care to fail, okay? They're just willing to just try something completely out of the blue, take the wild risk, see what happens, okay? Then you need achievers that are going to go from the idea, because we said the idea is not very useful, to making really fast progress, really, really focusing on getting done somewhere. Now, when I say getting done somewhere, I put settlers, because if you, you know, this is a colonization, you know, 18th century. I'm from Quebec, so, you know, the British come over, and then you have to form a village. Otherwise, you haven't done anything. So you have people to populate that village so you can grow an empire, right? I mean, that's a very, very specific requirement. If you don't have those people, it's always going to be at war against, you know, the native or something, but you're not going to get anything built, right? Now I've talked about managers. So when you start having processes, so here, you know, when you're coming mission-centric, you really know kind of where you're going. You have to be able to manage processes, so you need managers. If I go 18 months ago, I hated the word. I didn't even know what it meant. I didn't want to use it, even for myself. But I had to learn. And then, of course, you need business people and chiefs and things like that, you know, kind of keep things on track. Some of it experience, and you know, one piece that's not in there actually, that's very, very important, is your network. You know, who are your advisors, who are your mentors, who are the people that have gone through this that can help you figure out what's your next step, you know, in terms of that overall team aspect of, you know, making the next best hire. So when we talk about holes in the organization, we have holes in terms of the technical aspect. You know, have you ever done sales before? Have you this, and this? But this is a more, you know, cultural thing. It's more of a, you know, who you are as an individual. I started more as an achiever than a pioneer. I think I have learned to do some management. I think there was more work to do, which leads me to the next slide. Because when you change your organization, I found this one slide very, very enabling, because for us, every year, what we have responsible for, the managers and even everybody in the company, is different. So first, you have to make sure that for the role that's defined for you in the organization, you're competent. So I used to always think you work on your strengths, but I have to admit that there's some truth to this one slide that thinks that even if you're not good at, if they're part of your job description, they are the top priority. We have to close those gaps right away. The fastest, the better. And provide the resources, because, you know, the people that they may change very quickly. Some change more slowly, and that's fine. They are assets to your team, and it's your job to make sure that people are competent to the role that they have. So it's not easy. And what I've thought of is, just in looking at the past 10 to 12 years, if you're working with someone and you're officially supervisor, I like the idea that you're willing to give them something, you know, something that's really in their best interest and it aligns with the company, but it's more something that they want. And then you really ask for something too, you know, something that is not their top priority, but it's essential and preferably should tie back to this. So as a supervisor, you want to help them close that gap. So you try to come up with one topic at the time to help them close that gap. And then they probably will be asking for something to strengthen what they're already good at. It's just the way it is. So start. This is also new. That's the book, Team of Teams. I've got the full, this is a very short 3-page summary about it that I thought was very, very interesting, because I didn't know anything about this, and the organization has kind of slowly changed from a very clear organogram to having more sub-team. You know, we have engineering, we have services, and then we have the administration type stuff, HR, and we have a couple other things going on, and sales. Yeah, sales is a team. So we started thinking really about these teams having some overlap. So, you know, you got one guy that is doing engineering and sales, you have another guy engineering and manufacturing, and you're more able to be very, very effective because there's the right information. Nobody likes to just read and updates. We have to have it in our heads, right? That's how we move fast. So you have to have enough people that have the right knowledge in the team. And the biggest challenge that I remember about the team of teams I summarize here is you have to be able to share information. So like cost, for example. Yeah, here's all the data. This is how much we spent on this thing, and this is what I'd like to spend. So there's some understanding. And with respect to the setback, let's say with customer, this guy would do this, but if we can do that, and it's good for the people in the team if it's an area of service to know it, if it's an area of engineering to know it. So you kind of have to get to where you need to be. So for us, because we're process driven right now, we have sales first, then we build stuff, and then we service with it. Those are really 3 key functions. But what's behind it, of course, we have technology, analytics, and all that stuff. But we want to be very, very clear on how we make decisions for every aspect. And one thing I've done last week, I had 2 real engineers at the conference presenting to people. No sales background, but they've learned a lot. They know what the questions are. They struggle with it. And we had a lot of training ahead. I didn't just put them in there. But it's been extremely valuable, not only because we look real. That's very important, by the way, for sales. I think I'm going to talk about that in the 1 hour we talk about sales. People buy from people. If you just have a nice website, nice pamphlets, and you bring the professional people to a trade show, chances are you're only going to get question and interest. It's not going to turn into commitments, and that's when people actually commit. They commit to buying from people that they believe are going to help them solve the problem, relieve the pain. So if you're the leader of a team, you try to keep track of what's going on, but also you try not to influence too much the process. You try to let them be. That's very hard for me. You want to foster a culture that allows this discussion, and that's a little bit that tree that 5 dysfunction of the team. So each of your sub-teams should be able to function as a full team. Trust, commitment, conflict, and accountability result. Now, people are generally not satisfied with their work, which to me means make it better. So, read this book, The Progress Principle, very, very briefly. I don't have much time these days, but essentially, if you're on a very tough journey to a very big mission, very easy to keep your eye on the end goal and not value, not appreciate all these small incremental changes. Going back to this chart up there about making decision, it's an achievable goal, but it's hard. When you go through this and you get there and then you realize you're back here again, you should feel good about it because you've done something, okay? And it's very hard, but it's an important part. So if it's a big setback, if now you realize that you have 5 times more work to do, that's where the whole team should get together and just acknowledge we have a setback, we have to make a brand new plan. It's going to be hard, but let's work on it so we know. The sooner that you accept setback and discuss it and replan, the better off it is for the morale, because now you're back on the upper slope as opposed to be, drowning yourself slowly or fast, depending on the situation. So that's what I had today, guys. It's important. I do have a PhD, right? So I kind of went, kind of created a little bit theory here and mixed with some example and stuff. But it's not going to work all the time, okay? There's be weeks, months. You may be down to the wire, okay? The company's about to collapse, running out of money, customer not, coming in, whatever it is. And the only thing I can think of, and I didn't think about that ahead, but it's courage at that point. If you have the courage to say, this is the toughest patch, let's forget. And typically, when it gets very, very hard, and you may have fear, and you may have everything, slow down. No problem, okay? Because when you think of courage, courage to me means you have the faith that if you keep walking, and this is as a team, eventually it will get better. Okay, you're in the shade right now. You're in the rain. You can just keep going. Eventually, you'll get to a pasture and you'll be able to rest. If you stay right there or take a step back, good luck to you. So it doesn't matter how fast you go if you keep walking. The accountability, adaptability, we've talked about that quite a bit, but it is very, very, very important. You can have all these skills and great working relationship, we trust, I acknowledge I suck at this and all of that, that's all great, and we all want this company to be successful. But guess what? Whatever we've been thinking we want to do is not what we need to do today or tomorrow or next week, okay? So how are we going to do this? Well, I know this guy who's got this thing, and then, all the ideas start coming up, and then we're back again. You have to be willing to adapt, to change what you think you need to do on a spin. And that's, people say, with MMT, we've been extremely nimble. I mean, it's kind of an interesting way to think of it, but it really is. Well, we're going there, and then all of a sudden it's like, wait a minute. Yeah, we should go there. And we just keep going, okay? And it's a fast process. It's based on all these things, about decision making. If you're making the machine in my team and you want to do it another way, tomorrow you're going to be doing it another way. I may not even know about it, okay? Because you have those people around you, and there's also some decision being made, and a month later, if it doesn't work, it'll be, oh gosh, what are we going to do now? It's not, what are you going to do? Of course, now we have to talk back to the customer and be like, we're a month behind, 2 months behind, whatever. It's just like, okay, can you try next time, tell me ahead so I can handle more of that situation? But that's how the team of team actually, works in practice. You can't all be on the same meeting at the same time. We learned from one of the first act, we want about 5 people there, Companies got 12 full-time right now, so you just got to break it down, It didn't used to be the case, we just have a meeting, just talk about whatever is going on, So that's different. I have it there. Go work hungry, all right? Come to school hungry. Go home at night feeling like, gosh, this is why, said every lecture costs how much? Oh, let's not go there, yeah. Yeah, okay. Anyway, it's expensive for you to be here, right? And that's why you want to get the most of it. We're going to stop the tape. We have recitation with all sorts of stuff going on. I hope you learn. We're trying to share some experience. Of course, you're only going to get your experience when you work. If nothing else, perhaps it's going to guide you into making some of the hard decisions on your first job. But think of that. Doesn't matter really if you're going to reevaluate. Maybe you won, maybe you didn't, right? And what you decide to do? Don't get too anxious, stressed. I wish I could go back and be less anxious and stressed. I tell you that much. Okay, thank you very much.